Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Before we start this session, let us spend a few minutes in silence. Thank you. Respected International President, brothers and sisters, we have with us this evening three speakers, of course from three different sections of the Theosophical world: Belgium section, Dutch section and Ukraine section. At the outset, I extend a very warm welcome on behalf of International President, as well as the Theosophical headquarters at Adyar to all these three speakers. It is always great pleasure to be at Adyar, and you three are three different streams bringing energy towards the headquarters. What shall I call them? May I call them Ganga, Jamuna, Saraswati? Actually, it is the union of three rivers. River is the symbol of change. River is the symbol of life stream. That change, three rivers have come together forming a holy place, what we call Sangam. The first speaker, Sabine van Osta. She is the General Secretary of the Theosophical Society, Belgium section. She is an active member of the Theosophical Society since last 14 years and worked as President of the Lodge and Secretary to the Board of Belgium section, and since 2012 she worked as General Secretary of the section. Apart from the organizational work, she gives lectures on core theosophical themes in Dutch, French and English. Besides her own articles published in various theosophical publications, she has also translated articles for theosophical articles of theosophical authors, and I have gone through one of her articles recently published in our December Theosophist, titled Bridging Science and Spirituality, Sign of Our Time. She is very good author, and she puts a question which is very important and something to contemplate. The question is it not so that advancement of science dependent and still depends upon one or the other idea or insight, which we call intuition? Now, I call upon Sabine van Osta, General Secretary of the Belgium section, to speak on topic Beckons for a World in Motion, a Clear Mind, a Pure Heart. Sabine.
Thank you for this very kind introduction, Professor Cindy. Dear Mr. President, dear Mr. Vice President, dear sisters and brothers, wherever you are, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some views with all of you on the theme of this 139th International Convention of our Society, Theosophy in a Changing World. In this part of the program, it's 5th day already. Chances are already less likely you will fall asleep, and I can assure you I will do my utmost to make it that way. This lecture will be over before you know it. We look around in the world of today. We look around in the world of today on as much levels as it is given to us to see and to experience this world. The physical, the etheric web, the emotional and the mental realms. It is all there, all the time interacting with each other, a huge melting pot of causes and effects. In all this, I would like to state that in these times, our main focus of awareness is shifting from the physical to the emotional and the mental realms. Now, why do I state this? That will be the subject of the next few minutes. A theosophical-oriented audience perhaps does not have the habit of taking a look at statistics, because finally, what do figures tell us? And yes, indeed, it is never only about the figures, as we will see in a moment, but nevertheless, since statistics are there and they serve a purpose, let's give them a chance to serve that purpose. There are, in fact, two numeric facts that I would bring to your attention on the above statement about the shift of focus towards the emotional and the mental realms. The first fact was brought to our attention by our international president in his article, Theosophy and the Crowding World, which was published in the Theosophist in October 2013. There it was stated that since 2007 or 2008, the urban population had become more important in numbers than the rural population. So today, more people are living in cities than in remote villages spread across the land. This information is actually provided by the United Nations and can be consulted on the internet, evidently. Besides the many burdensome implications, I need not to tell you that, amongst others on the world's ecosystem and economics, the state of affairs is has also interesting possibilities, as Tim Boyd stated in his article, and I quote, "Those who find themselves growing in awareness sense not only the quality of the thought currents, but also the possibilities for shifting them." Now this is where it could become interesting, especially when the intensity of the currents is significantly increasing, as is the case in areas with a high-density population. Now, we are definitely not the only ones to see these possibilities. In fact, there exists a whole army of people busy in authorities of all kinds, institutions, or worse, commercial and even criminal organizations who, even without too much of an enhanced awareness, do sense the potentials of this vast ocean of information, emotions, and thoughts present in today's urban areas. A whole science has been developed which studies and examines behavioral patterns in human beings, specifically those behaviors that interest them. For example, on basis of which they can earn money. Our behavior is being scrutinized even without many of us knowing or realizing this, even with our full yet ignorant cooperation. The key words here, you might have guessed, are the internet, social media, and in a broader scale, all forms of electronics-based interactions into which our daily lives are channeled. Just to give you an idea, and I cannot help it, I apologize beforehand for coming up again with a few statistics. According to Internet World Stats, 3 out of 7 billion people on the planet are using the Internet one way or another. Internet use rate is the highest in the Western world, going from 88% in the US down to 52% in Latin America. Internet use is lowest in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Internet use is growing fastest in Asia and lowest in the Middle East. Social networking groups are being used most by users aged between 18 and 29, least by people aged between 50 and 64. But this age group of social media users appears to be the fastest growing on this moment. Even half of the internet population aged over 65 uses social media these days, and this can only be a good news because this means that there are a lot of more mature users present on the internet. But with all these figures, no wonder that 93% of marketeers, those monitors of human behavioral patterns on the internet, use social media as a fundamental tool in their job or their business. In short, if humanity can be compared with a lemon, it is being squeezed on Facebook and Twitter. This second fact seemed interesting to me to be highlighted and to corroborate my statement about a shift from a physical towards a primarily emotional and mental awareness. Our minds, and specifically the minds of young people, are constantly shaped by all this information exchange offered by the new possibilities of direct communication through devices of all kinds, and, very important, through electronic and online gameplay. To what do these new lines of mental development lead? How is the development of the emotional and the mental carriers of coming generations influenced by these interactions, knowing that often inverted ethics, rude and offensive behavior, and violence get the most of the attention and emphasis. But even for the internet in a general sense, what is the consequence of making available all types of information, even without properly preparing all and everyone to deal with that information? These are questions to ponder upon seriously during the next decades for more than one reason. Extremism and fanaticism are only possible in a society cut off inwardly and outwardly from a free yet balanced flow of information. Hatred and strife often see their origin in a misunderstanding of the function of emotions in our lives. Confusion and all forms of separateness can only continue to exist when those who could ignite clarity of mind remain silent, do not sufficiently speak up, or fail to reach the many. However, clarity of mind is paramount, as stated in a Chinese proverb in such a simple yet brilliant way, and I quote, "If there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world." So, despite the whole story of the internet and social media, peace in the world still starts with light in the soul. When we look around in the world of today, it has become blatantly apparent that there is, on the one hand, a serious lack of light in the soul, and that, on the other hand, there is an entire battle going on just for that, light in the soul. When you can make people forget their own ownership of their own mental world and behavior, when you can make them open up themselves without reserve to the earlier mentioned scrutiny by marketeers, things apparently evolve into a wrong direction. From the moment individuals reclaim the ownership of their own mental life and behavior and see internet and social media for what they really are, just valid tools for contacts, communication, and why not constructive self-education, albeit with the necessary caution, the play of power can come to an end. A clear understanding of this mechanism is a question of ultimate discernment and, yes, wisdom. To come to that clear understanding has been the reason of existence of every wisdom tradition or religion which has been present or is still present on this planet. We recall here the strong message of Krishnamurti, who taught us to reclaim our own inner life, to draw the line in time, and avoid Big Brother in whatever form from trespassing into those zones of our being where they have no business at all in the first place, certainly not for the sole purpose of taking advantage of our behavior for whatever reason possible, political, commercial, scientific, medical, you name it. So we look with this clear mind to the real challenges of today's world. To name but a few: the extreme economic imbalance in the world, illiterateness, lack of education, child labor, lack of basic medical care or safe drinking water, waves of fear and insecurity that are constantly being sown. We could ask ourselves some questions like, how can new media be put more to the advantage of solving those challenges? How can these new tools help us make thought currents shift into several new constructive directions? However big the potentials might be, if we do not make a proper start with putting healthy principles into practice, a play of the universal kind, named karma, will compel us to do so anyway. As Helena Blavatsky said, and I quote, "Do not be afraid of your difficulties. Do not wish you could be in other circumstances than you are. For when you have made the best of an adversity, it becomes the stepping stone to a splendid opportunity." And further, she says, "It is an occult law, moreover, that no man can rise superior to his individual failings without lifting, be it ever so little, the whole body of which he is an integral part. In the same way, no one can sin nor suffer the effects of sin alone. In reality, there is no such thing as separateness, and the nearest approach to that selfish state which the laws of life permit is in the intent or the motive." End of quote. Indeed, this will be among the big lessons that the world community of today is busy learning. The younger generations clearly up front. We are not in this alone. We are in this together. And we are all interconnected in realms even beyond the internet, and in ways still ignored by the many. This has everything to do with our common ground of existence, one of the pillars on which manifestation itself is built. The baseline of this common ground has been summed up by all great teachers of humanity, and we hear the same idea repeated over and over again, amongst others, by one of the great living teachers of our times, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. A professional laugher, as he calls himself in his autobiography entitled My Spiritual Journey. This is what he said in his acceptance speech of the Nobel Peace Prize in December 1989, and I quote, "No matter what part of the world we come from, fundamentally, we are all the same human beings. We seek all happiness and want to avoid suffering. We all have essentially the same needs and similar concerns. As human beings, we all want to be free, to have the right to decide our own destiny as individuals, as well as the destiny of our people. That is human nature. And the Dalai Lama continues in his autobiography. The problems that confront us today are created by man, whether they are violent conflicts, destruction of the environment, poverty, or hunger. These problems can be resolved thanks to human efforts, by understanding that we are brothers and sisters, and by developing this sense of fraternity. We must cultivate a universal responsibility toward each other and extend it to the planet that we have to share. End of quote. Indeed so. There is only one planet to serve us in that one pursuit that we all have in common. The one purpose that remains in the heart of us all. To lead happy lives, and for most of us to share this happy life with our loved ones. It is the search towards our divine core, our primordial nature, back to bliss. It sounds incredible, but this is actually the bottom line of all that is going on. All the greed, all the excessive gathering of money and power, the thriving on strong waves of hate, lust, passion, regardless of the suffering that is caused in the process. Altogether, they are types of movement which in the end alienate us rather than bringing us closer to that primordial nature, especially when we pursue these only for ourselves or for the mere benefit of the group of which we consider ourselves a part. So the current state the planet and all its inhabitants are in is the result of our own actions, thoughts and feelings to a very great extent. Truly and efficiently taking up this responsibility is the only way to make things evolve into a different direction. The process can be ignited and kept alive by a few strong individuals in the right places who are allowed to pass the message on to future generations. But eventually, it will be up to each and every one of us to do our part of the job to the best of our ability. The same internet we discussed earlier might just as well be a very valuable, wholesome, and efficient instrument and ally in bringing about the change the planet needs if we use it responsibly for that purpose. The call for responsibility and the potential it contains reminds us of the timeless wisdom as it can be found in the Idyll of the White Lotus, another recommendable classic of Theosophical literature. And I quote, "There are three truths which are absolute and which cannot be lost, but yet remain silent for lack of speech. The first, the soul of man is immortal, and its future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendor has no limit. Second, the principle which gives life dwells in us and without us, is undying and eternally beneficent, is not heard or seen or smelt, but is perceived by the man who desires perception. Third, each man is his own absolute lawgiver, the dispenser of glory or gloom to himself, the decreer of his life, his reward, his punishment. End of quote. If and when the conditions are met on all levels of existence, anything is possible. When you hear this, the most probable and logical question coming to your mind will be, what then are the right conditions? Well, that is exactly the whole point in our story. In fact, it has been and ever will be the whole point in the history of humanity and this planet. Because the right conditions can be as good as anything at any given moment, at any given time, the imaginable as well as the unimaginable. It is all about the exact combination of elements which perfectly fits the specific players and circumstances of a given situation. It is the right key to that specific lock that needs to be unlocked. And so it is with things like self-realization, peace on earth, humane living conditions for all, and the solution to many a problem that individuals and humanity as a whole face today, however gruesome it might look. On top of that, wherever we look for the keys, they are most likely to be found in each one of us. And with a high probability, we could define them as a clear mind to work with in all our endeavors and a pure heart as the keeper of our firm conviction that we can do better than this for all that lives on our earth. The possibility to keep our minds clear and our hearts pure is actually part of our divine heritage, and it always will be. This is what Theosophy teaches us. We can like this heritage or not. We can consider ourselves capable of realizing it or not. The fact remains the fact. And Theosophy offers this advantage. It accepts and states the fact, no matter the background of the individual or life form, regardless of our opinions, those mental ornaments of our personality. I would like to conclude, as I promised to you it would be over in a jiffy. I would like to conclude with a quote from one of my favorite movies. Many of you might know it. It is called Bruce Almighty, starring Morgan Freeman in the role of God and Jim Carrey as Bruce. As things were not working out well for Bruce personally, Bruce had been seriously complaining about God, saying God was doing a very bad, a very lousy job. At some point in the movie, God invites Bruce over to him in his 7-story building to give him his job and endow Bruce with all his powers. In the weeks thereafter, Bruce spends his time exclusively in fooling around a bit with these new powers, only seeking to solve his own petty problems in order to feel good. So, for instance, while Bruce is having lunch in a diner, he orders himself a bowl of tomato soup and he tries to part the soup in his soup bowl. In fact, he's a bit mimicking the story of the Red Sea, Moses and all, you know. Later on in heaven, God alludes to this scene when talking to Bruce, and he says, "Parting your soup is not a miracle, Bruce. It's a magic trick. A single mom who's working 2 jobs and still finds time to take her kid to soccer practice, that's a miracle. A teenager who says no to drugs and yes to an education, that's a miracle. People want me to do everything for them, but what they don't realize is they have the power. You want to see a miracle, son? Be the miracle." And with this, dear sisters and brothers, let us invite ourselves and each other to be the miracle with a clear mind and a pure heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine van Osta, for sharing your thoughts.